you mentioned, you talked about this amazing program that you've created, but what's the, your motivation? What was the reason behind creating this?
Because I didn't want any young person to have to make a choice when they were too young to make that choice. And also I didn't want the system to choose for them. I think it's the right of a young person to choose what they want to do. And obviously in football, we have to make those choices quite early, and we get forced to make those choices quite early. Or if you're not at this club, then you won't be good enough. And I think when you're 13, 14, you're not old enough to make that decision. So imagine if we had a system where they felt safe that they were getting football as good as anywhere in any club, anywhere in the world. And obviously their studies were world class, and then their social development was world class as well. Then they could study all of that till they were 18. And then when you're 18, you are way more mature, and you are in a much better place to go. And then now I'm gonna decide whether I want to keep pursuing it at a club or university or in another country, or actually I don't need to pursue it anymore. So yeah, I guess keeping the choice open, and also taking care of them holistically. So I burnt out physically as a young player, as a person, around 13, 14 years old, always traveling to the club, playing for the school, no one really communicating, and I got a really bad injury, and my injury was from overplay, and I never recovered from it, and eventually I had to retire, and I'm in a lot of pain. And I know not everyone will experience that, but I think the principle of overplay, I don't think there's any reason to overplay a child, but the reason we do overplay children is because they play for several different organisations that don't communicate with each other. So imagine if it all happened under the same roof with professionals who it was their responsibility to take care of their load and ask them to rest when it was time to rest, or develop their strength conditioning enough to support their musculature to be able to perform when they needed to. So that's another reason as well of kind of holistic care of the individual, where there's no risk of burning them out physically, and there's no risk of burning them out mentally, because the program itself, yes, we do loads of football and it's specialised in football, but it's not about football. So it's what I describe as holistic specialisation, because to be good at something you've got to do it a lot. But I think there's a responsibility that when someone is putting a program in place where you do it a lot, is that they also do other holistic stuff, which is completely different but will help your passion. What people don't want to do, what young people don't want to do, is do a different thing that is just taking them away from their passion. So the things that I've chosen to do are, I call them performance playground activities. So dance, yoga, boxing, martial arts, trampolining, gymnastics. These things that work on weight transfer, work on strength flexibility, just like moving as a let's move as a child for as long as possible. I would love if I could still move as a child, and it just helps your football, as well as giving that holistic development of, oh, you're not just doing one thing. Okay, you're actually doing way more than someone who's doing the standard football one term, hockey one term, cricket one term. And then you add in the psychology, which I would consider as holistic, because you're working on the mind, and then the analysis, which is like the equivalent of marking in academics. It's like, let's look at how we mark our own work the best we can. Strength conditioning, a couple of times a week, so important. Something I didn't have when I was playing at like the top level of youth football. I didn't have strength conditioning. So how was my body ever going to be able to cope with that? And then for me, the academic side, where you're in a place where you're studying in the same place you're playing football, is holistic as well, because if you've had a bad time in football, you get to then go and focus on that, or vice versa. Or if you're having a good time in both, I remember when I used to play, if I had a reserve game in the evening, all day waiting to play the game, I was just so nervous. But when I was at night school or like college, I would do work in the day leading up to the game, and I would feel so much better because I was distracted.
And then probably a big question that a lot of young players will have is, you know, can you be a pro after the program?
Yeah, and it's a really tricky one to explain because the simple answer is yes. There have been quite a few people who have become professional footballers when they've graduated at 18. And this sometimes puts people off, but my aim is to not create or help you become a professional footballer. That's not my aim. My aim is to teach you football at the highest level. Will there be opportunity if you are good enough to be signed? Absolutely. Scouts will come to watch our games, and if they like what you're doing, then we will let you know, and you can go on trials if you want to go on trials in your final year at 18. But why is that not the aim? Because I always ask young people, do you want to be a professional footballer or do you want to play football? Because they are two very, very different things. And if you want to be a professional footballer, then potentially there are other things you would do to do that. You might want to get an agent, for example. You might fly yourself around the world to find a league where you fit in and you're good at. You might you'll definitely go to a day school. So you could be at a club and almost be in that system. Whereas if you want to play football and be elite at football, for me, you need to be in a place where you can learn. And this is why I do what I do in a school setting, elite football in a school setting, because you can learn football properly in a learning culture and a learning environment without the pressure of contracts, without the pressure of being released. All you then need is a world-class syllabus, which I can provide and I teach you from. And if you're then open to learning in that, then you will be the best footballer you could have possibly been at 18. Now at that moment, do you then need a bit of luck to be in the right place at the right time with the right scout watching? Yeah. But if your aim is to be the absolute best you can be, to give yourself the best chance if it does happen, and if it does happen, to give yourself the best chance to have an actual career, because there's another thing of, oh, I signed a professional contract at 18, but then that was it. Okay, then was that enough? You're a professional footballer, you tick the box, was that enough? And also the other side of it, the reason this program is about football, but it's about more than football, is we just use football to facilitate and create way more important skills in a young person, like courage, like excellence, like vulnerability, integrity, deep practice, growth mindset, just so many of those things that are way more important than any game. However, I do want to make the point that it is through football.
Yeah. So
we do loads of football, but there are way more important things than football, which is why it is more than football. So it's one thing me saying about how amazing it is and how good it is, but I'm the one running it. So the most powerful truth is through people that have been through it, and Joel, obviously you went through it for 2 years. So yeah, tell me about your experience in it.
Yeah, well, I joined after being at a Premier League academy from the age of 9, 10, and then joined the programme after being released at 16, and was sort of like most people are, not really going to give it a second, not really going to think about it, not really thought about going to a school to play football. I gave it a chance, and I improved those 2 years more than I did in my 9 years at Reading, than I've done after I've left, and I became myself again. I became more than just a footballer, and that's a massive thing that I took out of it, and a lot of people that I've talked to that have been on the same journey as me, that you enter as a footballer because you've been at an academy, but then you leave as your own person, whoever you want to be, and that's something that I never in a million years thought I'd be saying as a 16-year-old playing at a Premier League academy. I thought I'd just be a footballer, wanting to be a footballer, but to be happy in everything that I'm doing now is so much more important.